Hey guys, let's see if this works again. I might lag a little bit. Yeah, I'm lagging. So, gosh dang it. All right, this is stupid, but whatever. I kind of quit caring. Anyway, you guys. So my um, whole conversation tonight kind of will be about the new MTG decks and how I feel about them. Um, right now, uh, I think they could have a little bit better things to offer. Maybe for card worth. Um, I feel like we're getting some good cards kind of that can help us, but the deck still is slow. It's very slow and sturdy. Uh, it's not really anything spectacular. It's not a deck that I would probably want to consider a very aggressive deck. And I'm lagging right now, and I can see that I'm lagging, and that just really annoys me. So hold on, I'm gonna try to figure something out here. I'm sorry, you guys, my thing's lagging. It sucks. But just we're gonna have to deal with it right now. At this point, I'm sorry, you guys. As much as I hate it, it's lagging, and I don't think there's anything I can do. So uh, yeah, there's just not very much I can do. It's gonna super lag, and that's just stupid. But anyway, you guys, so my main goal is to assess the situation of how I feel about this MTG deck. Um, do I feel like this deck is going to be good in any way? Well, this morph deck, let's take a look at it. So I am basically running black, green, and blue. You guys hopefully can see. And I'll read it to you guys. So the first face down creature spell you cast turn costs 3 less to cast. So whenever a face down creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So that's really nice. I get a draw base, and it costs 3 less to cast. So this whole deck is a morph deck. So this morph deck consists of me throwing down a card maybe every other turn or every turn that I can. So I'm still lagging, and I can see I got my phone down below that I'm watching, and I see that I'm lagging very badly, and I don't know why. I'm trying to get it figured out, but I can't do it right now. So I'm sorry for you guys. But anyway, so this morph deck, again, black, one green, one blue, and one colorless. And it's a 3/3 commander. So that's not bad. Now, again, we're not worried about command damage with this guy. This guy, it's not based around like a Voltron deck like Sigarda, where I'm going to be worried about trying to beef this guy up. This guy just basically wants me to build my deck up by using his abilities, which is cast a morph card for 3 less, which is for free basically, and then then do whatever else I have to do, which is whether I search my deck for something, whether I counter somebody for something, or whether I give myself fly for or some other reason. So this commander is not going to let me worry just about him. It's not one of those commanders that I have to kind of look at it and go, oh, I have to, excuse me, I have to build him up. Or, oh, I have to, focus only on him and him only. So what do I do to build him up? That's not how it works. It's not like Sigarda in any way. So Sigarda, our main focus with Sigarda is beef her up, get her to be nasty, and then make her the flying 5/5 girl or whatever you beef her up to. You make her the 5/5, and then you beef her the hell up, and you swing with her, right? That would go with Sigarda, and so with her, and I'll show you. If you guys don't already know what Sig looks like, you guys probably already know what she looks like, but I'll let you peek at her. So this is what Sigarda kind of ultimately looks like. So this is my 5/5 flying girl. So this is my sweet pea. Right? So she's a 5/5 flying with hexproof and flying hexproof and can't cause me to have my opponents or my will not let my opponents cause me to sacrifice anything. So Sigarda won't let me do that, but she had fly. So again, there and again in itself, Sigarda has, yes, she has a lot of different answers to flying. She can answer for like an angel problems or anything that flies at her, she can respond. This morph deck has the least amount of responses to fly. So with the blue deck, the morph deck would be the more response would be counters. So again, playing with this, you're kind of focused on trying to make sure that your opponents are not doing anything that you don't want them to do, which is you control what you dictate what is going to happen if you can counter it. And if you can counter it and dictate, okay, yes, I want this card to exist on the field. No, I don't want this card to exist on the field. Yes, I would rather have this card be on the field, but it's no answer for me. I'd rather not have it on field, but I don't have the answers to do it. So what do I do? And there again lies that same problem like with Sigarda. She's not going to be able to answer anything with blue. So blue is not going to be, anything that she will have for counter. So she won't be able to counter anything. She won't be able to interact with anything. She won't be able to create more creatures. With the Sigarda deck or Voltron deck or some other decks, you're not going to have more interaction. So when you have one basic commander running your whole entire deck, you're going to only rely on one commander, and that's your commander only. Now, with this morph deck, again, it kind of gives you the upper advantage to like when you're going to fight against an elf deck. So the elf deck, you can let the elf deck do what they want when they want it, and possibly you have an answers. So, like, for instance, my answer would be like Archetype of Imagination, where all my creatures would gain fly and my opponents would have no longer fly. So if a elf opponent with an elf deck would run something with Death Touch and Reach, then yeah, I would be able to get smacked. But on top of that, I would be able to answer, but they wouldn't have fly. They would be able to lose fly. So and again, none of the angels, or not angels, excuse me, none of the elf decks are going to have fly. They don't want fly. They're just basically going to be one to look for groundwork. And a lot of elves that I know that are basic ground elves are going to just do anything with ground, and they're going to scatter and poop tokens, or they're going to make tokens come out. They're going to make things just populate and just create big, wide, beastly tokens that are just redonkulous. But again, there comes the morph, where when you morph your creature, it's not going to know what's underneath your card. So your opponent can wait and see what you possibly have for an answer. Like maybe you can morph up a counter spell, or you can morph up a creature that gives you the counter all opponents that your abilities that your opponents have, for instance. So your opponents can yet do that, but or you can do that. But again, you're only going to have like what 2/2 more creature tokens. So this deck is not really based for a win right now. This deck is not a win ratio. It's won maybe 3 duels, I think, since I've had this deck. It's an okay deck. There's a lot more that I would like to do with it, like maybe put some counters in there, give the 2/2, give my 2/2s a beef up, and then maybe put like, um, I don't know, something that just beefs it up straight out, like um, something that could just work with, beefing the deck up a little bit more instead of letting a 2/2 sit there and just be a 2/2. I would rather have something be a 4/4. But then again, here's another thing that I like, kind of give and take about this morph deck, is that there are some creatures that when I morph it, I can put a 1/1 counter on it, which is nice. It will help. Excuse me, I'm burping. But it is not enough. So you would want to put a counter on there and then play the Rogue's Passage, or not play Rogue's Passage, where you beef it up and then you can swing unblockable and make one of your highest creatures unblockable and just kill, or try to hit for a kill or hit for something high or hard. But most of your decks on here are not going to really do that. I'll show you some of the decks cards that I got. One card that I really am happy that I actually have in here, where there's 2. Let me look for it. This one, everybody probably might remember this one when playing Magic the Gathering. This one right here. Cyclonic Rift. This one. Cyclonic Rift, you can, for 6, you play 1 blue and 6 colorless, thing back to your opponent's hand. So everything that your excuse me, everything your opponent once had in his or her hand goes back to his or her hand, which makes it really nice, and it's really nasty. It kind of gives it the McNasties, if you will. Here's another one. It's Stormade Leviathan, whatever, and it has Island Walk, and it's unblockable as long as the defending player controls an island. Well, here's the thing. If you're going to play against a elf deck, are you going to be able to make all their lands islands? Well, here's the kicker. All lands are an island addition to their other type, so creatures without fly or island walk cannot attack. So that means that if you played this and Archetype of Imagination, which gives all your creatures fly and makes your opponents lose fly, where they can't gain fly, then those 2 are a winning combo. I don't have that card right now in hand, but those are 2 cards that I would actually recommend. So that's kind of one of the things that this deck runs with, is being able to make things not blockable, but as soon as you see that your opponents are looking for an answer, you can retaliate by giving them the answer. And this deck here has, this deck I created to where I can tutor, search for things. I can make things just annoying as hell. And it's a really nice deck, and I do like this deck, but it's not really a good deck at all. There's not much, like I said, that this deck's kind of going for, other than, it's just you're countering and you're kind of annoying your opponents to a death point. So basically, you're just brutalizing your opponents. You're basically just beating your opponents to to a point of ignition. You're just giving your opponents, you're making your opponents fight for the hardest win that they could ever possibly go for. And it's not really a nice deck. I kind of would say it's kind of annoying. This deck is more of an annoying deck than it is a common. I would use it on an everyday basis. But I'm going to make this deck a little bit better. And again, it's not a bad deck. Now with Sigarda, with her, again, with Sigarda, I have where she can give me a win ratio where if I put her out and I pump her up and I keep her on the field, I keep everything indestructible, I give everything, I try to make her indestructible. I try to give her enough room to breathe so that I can make her indestructible. Then I can swing with her and give her vigilance, and I can swing with her for maybe 11 and give her double strike. Then I can ultimately come out for a win. And that's kind of a win. That's what Sigarda mostly comes out with. So Sigarda has the more win ratio out of the two decks that I own right now, or out of the other deck that I own. But again, if you want to play with a deck that, I would say a Voltron deck is pretty good. I do like Voltron, but Voltrons are a lot easier to play against 1v1 because 1v1 you can handle the situation. You can control Sigarda. You can control, or not just Sigarda, you can control your Voltron deck a little bit, a smidge easier, and you know that your opponent is going to might not have an answer, or he or she may have that answer, but you can retaliate back and answer back in your own way. And it's still, the situation is under a controlled environment in some parts. It depends on how the game is going. Now with the morph deck, you have a little bit more room to breathe where you can do more, like 3 people. You can play with 3 people, and the 3 people or more that you're playing against will see what you're doing, and they will look at what you're doing and they'll say, oh, you're going to counter? Oh, okay. I counter your counter, or they'll respond back. But your morph deck is, you're not focusing 100% again on just one commander or one guy or one creature. You're focusing on everything. So that's nice when it's always good to have a variety of, when you're playing MTG, you want to be able to play with like a deck where you can go 1v1 and it works really good for 1v1s, like Sigarda. For instance, I'm kind of starting to learn that Sigarda really is good with 1v1. She handles the board well with 1v1. She doesn't back down. She doubles, or whatever she does. And it just given her that an instant win. She can be a real beast. But with my morph deck on 1v1, it's a little more difficult, and it makes it a lot more longer and a lot more strenuous and brutal for your opponent to sit there and just kind of want to keep watching you morph, counter, morph, counter, morph, counter, morph, counter, morph, morph, counter, morph, and do it over and over and over and over and over again, and repetitiously continue to do it until you either don't win or you let them win. And so that's why, like I said, when you're playing Magic the Gathering, you want to kind of watch what when you're building decks, you're playing decks, you want to get an idea of how you want your deck to function. You want your deck to interact with other players over there. So if you got more interaction, then you will be probably a little bit more liked, maybe not as much depending on what you do, but you can have a little more interaction with your opponents, where like a Voltron deck, you're not going to have much interaction with any of them. You're not going to have any interaction with any of your opponents. It's just going to be you and that deck, the owner of the deck, and the deck itself. So there's no interaction unless somebody counters it or you. But on most parts, when you got to also remember that when you're playing decks that are interactive, what are their abilities, and you want to make sure, like, when you figure out what their abilities are able to do, uh, how can I work with what my opponents are doing, or how can I, maybe interact or stop them, or be able to get a win. So in a deck with like a morph deck, you want to have a win, a ability to win, not an ability to not win, but just annoy the crap out of them. You don't want to just be the annoying deck, and that's kind of what basically this deck does. It's more of the I'm very annoying. I'm not going to win, but I'm going to counter, and I'm going to interact with what I do. So how am I going to interact? And that's where a morph deck comes very highly recommended for, like, I think, elf decks. And when Magic the Gathering started Commanders, I think Magic the Gathering or Wizard of the Coast had this idea that they wanted their interaction to work with other decks that were built or that were being built or not yet built at the time. So they wanted their interaction to be pretty close and significant with each other. They didn't put really good cards in there like Double in Season, which I really was hoping that Double in Season would be in that morph deck. I really wanted it to be there because Double in Season would have topped the cake with that deck. That deck would explode with Double in Season if you had counters in it and popped it off with Double in Season. That morph deck just boom, 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 boom. Your opponents are going to see what you're doing. Your opponents are going to be able to interact with each other, and you're going to interact with your opponents. And also on top of that, you're going to kind of get a win-win-win ratio. But they didn't do it, which I was kind of a little disappointed in that theory. But they did try, however, to make it somewhat manageable and proportionately good to play with. Now, I'm not saying every deck that Wizard of the Coast uses or creates is going to be top-notch. It's not going to be top-notch all the time. So you're going to have to kind of rationalize, like, you're going to have to do some work in there too. You're going to have to put some work in that deck as well. So for me, I would have to make that morph deck better. So how am I going to interact? And when you build decks and you start replying things like counters and 1/1s or Voltron-ish ways, how do you want to win? What is your will to win? Like, what kind of win are you going to use? Are you going to use like Infect or just beef up your creatures and throw every creature at your opponents? Or are you going to go infinite and be able to have infinite ammo of mana or infinite amount of ability to just attack at infinite will? And how are you going to do that? So there's ways that can happen, and I've seen a lot of infinite combos and infinite wins have been also a good thing for players. It's annoying, yes, and I don't really like it as much. I think it's kind of annoying, but I mean, it's a cool thing to see. Sitting there watching your opponent key off on infinite combos and being able to say, I'm going to win, but I'll show you how I'm going to do it. That's kind of cool. I like to see those, but I really do like to see like old time cards like Enlightened Tutor that are very old. Just old school cards sometimes being used in decks that are just really helpful for a win. And they help you have that ability to possibly come close to a win or an answer that you need. So things like that I kind of like seeing in the deck. I was kind of ashamed that when I first bought this morph deck, it didn't have much of the old school stuff. Excuse me. It had just a lot of the newer school stuff, but it had like the permanent that let your stuff, you can untap all your stuff on your opponent's untap stage. So stuff like that Sorry, I thought I heard somebody at the door. Um, so stuff that Seaborn Muse. So Seaborn Muse was in that deck, and I thought about it a little bit more. I was like, yeah, Seaborn Muse is a pretty good card. I really do like that. But do I like it in that deck, or do I kind of like it in my Voltron deck? And so I took my Seaborn Muse and threw it into my Voltron deck, and now it's in my Voltron deck with Sigarda, and I seem to like it more with her than I do with my deck here, my Morph deck. Now, here's the reason why. Yes, all my stuff are going to be tapped, but again, quite a bit of my stuff will be tapped, but I will have more of an ability to have other stuff on the field to protect all my other creatures, backing them up. So with Sigarda, I would only have her and her only to use as a backup or as a defense mechanism for me. So that being said, I can tap mana, I can respond, I can do things. So having things like that in the deck is pretty cool. Like when you're using Seaborn Muse, it's pretty cool that you can pop things up on your opponent's turn and just hit them with like maybe a counter, hit them with something. So Seaborn Muse, which I don't think is a very expensive card, is another good card that I kind of do recommend for any green deck. Soul Rain is another one that I do recommend in that deck too. But just things that kind of give you an advantage of being able to play when you want, or play on your opponent's turn, or be able to use things. So things like that kind of have those cool little clicks. They're not much action because they're not really interacting. You're just upkeeping on your opponent's turn, but you're letting your opponents know, hey, I'm going to upkeep on your turn, or your opponents are going to have to deal with you upkeeping on their turn, or everything gets flipped up on their turn, and you're pretty much then can sit with a counter. So that's kind of cool that, you can wait for an interaction moment. So it does give you, Seaborn Muse does give you that interaction ability to interact a little bit. So those kind of cards are pretty good for like a Morph deck. And I might get another Seaborn Muse for that deck again too. But what do I think about my Morph deck? I think it's okay. Like I said, I've been, really thinking hard about how I want this deck to win. What's my possibility to win ratio? And my only answer is fly. Be able to make everything Island Walk and fly. Those are the only two things, Island Walk and fly. If I can get everything to become islands, then everything can't be blocked unless they got Island Walk or fly. And so everything I have will become flying. So there again they have to answer that. And they can't. If they can't, they're dead. So it's kind of more of, the Morph deck is more, like I said, for when you're playing with more people. Because if you can interact with more people, the more people can interact with you, then you'll be able to have a little bit more fun, and you won't be as bored as what it would normally take for you to answer, oh, well, what the hell? Wait a minute, you're morphing? Oh, okay. You get that little titty, not titty, little teeny bitty, a teeny bit of, responses, and it just makes it a lot more fun where you're able to do a lot of different things. But with a Morph deck, what I also like about it is that you're creating things that your opponents don't know what you're going to do. So when you have the Morph deck, you have things flipped down, and whatever it is that's morphed down, you can flip it up at any time as an instant. So with Morph, it's like instants. You're playing an instant. And which is also another good thing, because your opponents are not going to know what you're doing or what you're going to play until you morph it. So when you do that, then your opponents are going to be kind of, they're having to your opponents are going to realize, oh, well, he did this. What does this do? So you're interacting with your opponents by playing things at instant speed. You're not doing it just slowly and chug a lug la 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 la. You're not doing it just little by little by little. You're progressing as you go on. You're moving things forward, and you're able to make things happen a little bit more faster by playing things at instant speed. Your opponents are not going to know what you're doing, which means you can set up a trap. You can bait them into. You can have a bunch of counters in your hand, put a bunch of things on the field, and then bait them. Make them want to interact with you. Make them want to do something that would potentially have to make you do something to stop them from doing whatever they're doing. And that's another thing I kind of like about that deck is that you have that ability to do that. And that deck doesn't really let things go by very fast. It kind of makes you want to work with it. But it's not a bad deck, you guys. Excuse me, I just farted on live camera. But anyway, you guys, yeah, so and if you're going to ever play Magic the Gathering, think of it's basically kind of like a trick deck, I guess. You're kind of tricking them into wanting to play all their good cards. Or you can counter all their bad cards, and if you have more counters in your hand, you can, excuse me, excuse me, pardon me, you can make them play the bad cards first, and then when they want to play like or Birds of Paradise or Dublin Season or something that will help them do something, then you can react by saying no. So this is more interactive, and I think it's more productive. But anyway, you guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. My video is slowing way the heck down. So I will probably do a little live stream again tonight later. Hope you all doing good. I do love you guys. And just remember, if you guys are going to buy like Magic the Gathering pre-built deck, don't expect very much out of it. Don't expect like $100 worth of cards, because you're not going to get $100 worth of cards. You're probably only getting maybe less than 20 or 30, maybe on value tops. So you're not going to get very much out of it. And I wouldn't recommend you getting high hopes for it. But anyway, I love you guys, and hopefully we'll do a live stream again tonight, and my video thing will not feed as weird. So love you guys. Bye.